low-hanging fruits, where we see the comparative advantages for countries like Nepal. So ICIMOD, as many of you know, is the International Center for Integrated Mountain Developments. It is a regional mountain knowledge, learning, and enabling center, working on sustainable mountain development, focusing on mountain and the people. It is owned and supported by 8 countries, Afghanistan in the west to Myanmar in the east. So ICIMOD is organized into 3 strategic groups. The first one is about reducing risk of climate and the environment, which also includes reducing the air pollution risk. The second strategic group is about promoting mountain resilient economies and the landscapes. And third one is how we can enhance the regional cooperation, bring these 8 countries together and go with a common voice, the collective voice to all these global and regional platforms so that we are heard better. And the Hindu-Kush-Himalaya region, as you know, it is a global asset for food, energy, water, carbon, cultural and biological diversity. It extends from Afghanistan to Myanmar, 35,000 kilometers in length and 4 million square kilometers. And it is the water tower. 10 of the major river systems in Asia, they are fed by the glaciers. So the largest mass of the ice, besides the north and the southern pole, is in this region. That's why we call it the third pole. However, this region is melting 2 times faster than the rest of the world. So this has a huge implications in hydropower, in agriculture, in life and the livelihoods. So that's why we need investment to reduce the risk, which we call triple planetary crisis, climate change, air pollution, which is an emerging threat, and the biodiversity loss, and the build resilience. That's why we need green and resilient economic focus. When you see yesterday, we heard from eminent speakers about the need of road, need of infrastructure, need of hydropower and all those things. So what we need to consider when we talk about the infrastructure is the fragility, the vulnerability of the mountain lands, the hilly and unstable slopes, and the unpredictable rains, too much, too little rains, and the prolonged droughts, they are causing number of landslides and the death. If you see in 2022 figure, we had 327 landslides, 99 deaths affecting 992 families with economic effect of 88 million Nepali rupees, which is a big thing. So when we talk about infrastructure, we need to think of resilient infrastructure. The second point, when we talk about investment, we need investment to have a clean air. We could see, we had to divert the flights. We had to close the schools and the colleges. So what we need is investment for air pollution solutions. We could see the examples from Beijing in China. At one point of time, it was very hard to see the sky. So now they have managed to reduce the air pollution significantly. So we need investment to promote air pollution solutions because air pollution is a big challenge, not only for Nepal, but the globe. If we see the WHO figure, 7 million deaths worldwide every year due to air pollution. The third area where we need investment is restoring biodiversity and reviving life. This is again a global challenge. Over the last century, we have lost 70% of our biodiversity. And if we consider countries like Bhutan and Nepal or the Himalayan regions across the Hindu-Kush-Himalaya, the 85% population, they depend on highland ecosystem or the ecosystem services. And the quality of these ecosystem services is degrading. As you could relate the figure from Sikkim, the huge population of yak died over a week 2 years ago because of the extreme climates and the weather. So Nepal has identified some priority sectors that need urgent investment, and we also contributed in identification of those sectors as a priority sectors for Nepal with the Ministry of Forest and Environment, with this nationally determined contribution, which says that if we want to have adaptation, and the adaptation need is equal to $45,940 million if we want to meet our NDC targets. And if we see in Nepal's aid atlas, of this need, 45,940, so far the commitment is for $2,289 million. And the disbursed is $197 million. This does not include some of the figures from the World Bank, ADB, and other multinational development bank. This is a tentative figure which we collected from Aid Atlas, our partner Climatic Analytics. And this shows that, there is a huge gap between our need for adaptation and the fund that is flowing in Nepal. I think Mr. Secretary will elaborate on this. And agriculture is the Nepal's priority sector when we talk about the adaptations. But this is the sector which is globally underfunded. If you see the 2022 figure, the total climate finance was $660 billion US. And of the total $660 billion, only $28.5 billion went to agri-food system, which is our most priority sector. And of these $28.5 billion, the small-scale farmer, because in countries like Nepal, the farm holding is less than 5 hectares, all smallholders, and they received only 1% of the total climate finance. But if you see the impact of climate change in agriculture, as per FAO, it is 25% of total impact of climate change absorbed by agriculture sector. But they receive very tiny funds from the climate finance. Similarly, when we say the forest biodiversity and the water management is our second most priority, as highlighted in NDCs, and there also, it is a huge untapped potential. Nepal is rich in natural resources, as we heard yesterday from many eminent speakers, but this potential is still untapped. If we see in China, they are making a huge business with this traditional Chinese medicine, harnessing the potential of nature. But here, if we see our export of these medicinal plants or the Ayurvedic medicine, it is very, very less. And another challenge with regards to the nature is undervaluations. We are not giving the due recognition of the ecosystem services that we get from the nature. I give you one figure which says that the value of crop pollination, carbon sequestration, and water purification is estimated as $125 to $140 trillion, which is much higher than the global GDP. If the services we get from the ecosystem, from the nature is much higher than the global GDP, then what we need is investments in these particular sectors. So this is the study conducted in Nepal by Matthew et al. In 2022, 2 years ago, and they are saying that on an average, we are losing $250 per capita due to insufficient pollination of our agricultural crops. But if we see on the other side the potential, there is a huge potential to invest in bees, in honey, and many other value-added products. I did one study in which I could see that, from one single plant, which is called butter tree, cherry plants, we can have 18,000 metric tons of honey in a year. But we don't have a huge investor focusing on beekeeping of the honey, of the NTFPs and the medicinal plants. So this is what I wanted to highlight. And then we have many niche products and nature-based solutions which can be low-hanging fruits for the investors. For example, in agroecology, we have not gone so far with the chemicals, with the chemical pesticides and the fertilizers. So there is a huge scope to promote organic agriculture, to produce safe and hygienic food in Nepal, to certify them as organic. What we need is investments. And the Nepal Investment Board, they have come up with a good list of the products which have a comparative advantages, like large cardamom. If you see the large cardamom that we have in Nepal, this is available only in 3 countries of the globe, Bhutan, Nepal, and India. So it is a unique product. But we are not able to position this cardamom as a unique product in the global market because we don't have enough investments in these sectors. Similarly, in all these products which are identified by the Nepal Investment Board. The forest resources, Nepal is known as the best example of community forests. We know, Elinor Ostrom, who received Nobel Prize as the first woman in 2009, she mentioned the case of Nepal, how important it is to engage communities who use natural resources in the management, giving the community forest users group as an example. But at the moment, we are not able to harness the potential of community forest users group and the community forest in terms of bioprospecting, in terms of getting businesses out of the non-wood forest products that we have in the forest. We have 45% forest, which is huge. So what we need is investment to focus on biotrade, bioprospecting, and bio-businesses. Similarly, water management. We have plenty of springs, but we lack irrigations in our agriculture sector. And many communities in the hills and the mountains, they are facing challenges in getting drinking water. And we did one survey in western part of Nepal, in the Ilek and the surrounding districts, and what we found that 70% of the springs, they are drying up. But the good thing is the dried up springs can be revived if we follow certain protocols, if we bring investments. Because water is life, not only for human, but also for agriculture and other biodiversity. So this is another area to improve irrigations, to revive springs, to purify water, we need investments. And another most important area where we need huge investment is disaster risk reductions. This morning I was listening to news about the fire spreading across Nepal. The visibility is very low in Kathmandu and other places. So what we need is, the community-based flood early warning system. The early warning for the fire, early warning for the Gulf, glacier lake outburst, early warning for the landslides. And it requires huge investment in terms of setting the monitoring, setting the instruments, digitalizations, and many other areas. And the good thing is, yesterday, I was so pleased to hear from the delegates from China, from India, from Bangladesh, and across the globe that the prospect for regional trade is very good. The future looks bright. If you see this figure from UNESCO, they are saying that the intra-South Asia trade is going to be growing up like anything. So we have 3 billion people close to us, China, India, Bangladesh, and around us. So market is there. So what we need to do is, we need to invest, we need to come up with the quality products, and we need to position our products as nature-based solutions and harness this potential of our geological situations. So what can be done to harness these potentials? The first thing is we need to strengthen the ecosystem for the investments between the investors and the investment seekers. Yesterday, I was hearing from some of the investors that in Nepal we don't have many investment seekers. So to come up with a good number of investment seekers, we need to support the creation of alliance of incubators and accelerators who can develop the startups, then provide some seed funds, develop the new ideas, new innovations, seed to scale investment in green resilient enterprises, and then the investable business cases. Government can support, the development partners can support so that we have a good number of investable cases, bankable businesses that we can market in this type of forums. And then the harnessing investment expertise. We can learn from other countries how they harness the investment opportunities in their countries. And the ICIMOD as a regional learning and enabling center, we can bring countries together, at least in this Hindu-Himalaya region, interact and learn from each other and build on the experiences of India and other countries. So with this, thank you very much. Once again, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, esteemed President, for this very, very valuable presentation, which, as I said earlier, sets the tone for the major highlight of the session that we are converged here for. That is the panel deliberations, which will be led by the experts in the field and in the very gracious presence of the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister himself. Ladies and gentlemen, we shall witness and be part of this expert-led deliberation, and which will culminate into the statements by the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister as we conclude this session. So with this statement, may I now have the privilege of handing over the forum to the session moderator, Ms. Anu Joshi-Shrestha.
Thank you so much, Shivani. Been a very big fan of yours, so you always moderate it in such a way. I'm a big fan. Chair, if I may start the session. I think a lot has been shared. And we have our Deputy Prime Minister here as well, which really sets the stage for the engagement in terms of policy, engagement in terms of private sector, and where we are going. And I think the summit actually gives us the indication that Nepal is ready. Nepal wants to do something from the policy angle, from the angle for private sector who are really trying to improve with all the COVID happening, and before that the earthquake and the lockdown and everything. The economy it wasn't easy for us, but then here we are, and I think we should congratulate all of us that we're here to being so resilient, overcoming all the challenges and then taking up one step at a time for growth and businesses. For us, in this summit, we talk quite a lot about big investment, and it is very, very interesting and very, very lucrative for Nepal as well to really be talking about hydropower, infrastructure, areas where we really wanted to focus on, because that's the very important part of it. But then I think it is also very important not to miss out the small sectors, not to miss out sectors where micro and small enterprises are contributing to. The real need for investment also lies there. It's a little bit difficult thing to do. It's but then the outreach becomes very, very high. And also the growth trajectory of the country would be based on these sectors. So basically where we are looking at is agriculture sector, tourism sector, digitization processes that we're looking at. And the fact that the presenter just said, Dr. Surendra Raj Joshi, who really set the context of what are the areas of opportunity here. If it is climate financing is only contributing 1% to agriculture sector, do we really need to see and focus in this sector or not? Also, the areas that he really talked about is the ecosystem services that we have, water, air, these areas where we never account it for. Do we do the valuation of these ecosystem services that Nepal, the valuation of these ecosystem services that Nepal could actually. So do we harness our comparative and competitive advantage? So this session, ladies and gentlemen, basically focuses on small and beautiful areas where we really are trying to build on and ask for investment and say that we're investment ready. With this, I want to really get into the panel discussion. And in this panel discussion, I think we would segregate it in such a way that we cover the policy aspect first, and then we cover the enabling aspect. Then we get into the private sector, the whole private sector engagement of it. So the practice of the policies that are there, and then what are the areas where, like, you know, we would really want to focus on in terms of enabling services that are required. So with this, without much ado, I would really like to request our Honorable Secretary, Ministry of Forest and Environment. We work quite closely with Ministry of Forest and Environment at ICIMOD, and our Secretary Deepak Kharal has been really a person who would finish the line, you know, he would, once he decides, like, you know, then he has to do it. So I really appreciate that aspect of yours. And the question for you, sir, is, given Nepal's existing national determination contribution and implementation plan for mitigation and national adaptation plan, with sector-specific target and resource requirement, the conservation of forest, biodiversity, and watershed emerges as a second priority for adaptation, necessitating around $8,700 million for adaptation action. Where do you see potential investment or finance emerging from to fulfill such requirement? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Anuji. First, dear chairperson of this session, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Home Affairs, dear colleagues here in the dais, and also invitees and participants in the session. First, I would like to thank the organizer for organizing these sessions, especially focusing on investment in green sector, and also inviting me as a panelist to discuss in this session. And I would like to begin with the statement that when we talk about investment, generally what happens, the investment from private sector, it comes in mind at first. But investment in nature and investment in green sector should not consider only the investment in private sector. The investment should come, finance should come from all sector of the society, all level of the society, and all tiers of the government need to be considered. This, we are right now at the very challenging situation in the world. Climate finance we are talking about. As climate change is a very serious situation right now. It's a climate crisis is in very severe situation. And Nepal is already in a very vulnerable situation, and risk is very high in our there. To overcome this climate crisis in Nepal, Government of Nepal has identified many climate actions, especially climate actions in terms of mitigation actions and in terms of adaptation actions. And these climate actions have been documented in our National Adaptation Plan and National Determined Contribution Implementation Plan. And these two documents right now we have what kind of actions need to be done to overcome the climate crisis in the coming days. That's why these two documents has identified especially mitigation action and climate adaptation action. Nationally determined contribution and implementation plan is much concerned with over all sector of the all sector and all theme of the government, and adaptation actions are much focused in the adaptation part. Adaptation actions are very and very important in our situation, and mitigation is little important for our case. This national adaptation plan, as you said in your question, that forestry, biodiversity, and water sector has identified some activities and actions, and which has identified about $8 billion US dollar for investment in the coming 3 decades of time. Then sources for this investment is very serious in our case. And we have a government funding. One of the sources comes for investment is government sources. But government sources is quite limited, and government do not have sufficient resources to invest in this climate action. If you see the government funding of this fiscal year, about 10% of the government funding goes to the climate action. And rest of the things, government has another priorities to invest. And rest of the resources should come from the outside sources. And these sources for climate action, especially from the international climate finance, is one of the mechanism to invest in this area. This international climate finance right now, if you see, you will find this what we call a LDC fund, adaptation fund, loss and damage fund, green climate fund. This kind of mechanisms right now we have at international level. And this international climate finance, we should mobilize for investing in this green sector. Also, area of this investment is from our development partners. We have especially, these development partners are working here in the countries, USAID, UKAID, SJICA, Quake, and other development partners right now we have. They are another sources of investment in this sector. And also we have multilateral and bilateral development banks, which also invest especially in the climate actions. But they comes with the blending approach, you know. They comes with loan and grants together. And especially we accept the grants for climate actions and loan for other development parts. Not only that, we also should, in our NGOs, INGOs, we are getting supports in our climate action. Especially these NGOs, INGOs, and community-based organizations, academic sectors provides the supports to the government, especially in capacity development, awareness, and this sort of things, study, research things. Government receiving supports from this. This is one kind of investment we can also assume. And besides that, right now we have entered into this carbon trading mechanisms. This is another source of funding and another investment for climate actions. These kind of opportunities are there to invest in the climate action right now. This is our situation, and government is thinking, especially receiving the grants for climate action. And there are other systems is going on. Government has recently adopted the grid approach to accept and to work in the development projects. Right now, I stop right now here in your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for him. I think this is the first question. I'll come back to the second question. I do have one. But just to take this up further, I think there is a lot of collaboration, as you said, is needed from all sectors to come in to really have this financing done, to really mobilize this climate finance, the gap that is there. I would then, I think, it really brings on to the fact that development partners and banks, or ADBs and World Bank also plays a very, very important role to bridge this gap. With this, we have Takeo Koike from ADB, who's a regional head. I have this timer that I've done, I thought I'd give 3 minutes to all my speakers. So we would also want to manage that time. With 25 years of experience in infrastructure financing and public-private partnership across Central and South Asia, we're working also with power companies. My question to you is, drawing from your extensive experience in private sector, what do you consider the key factor that enables the transitioning to green and inclusive development? Additionally, what are some enablers that would attract private sector financing to address the substantial funding gap in climate finance and to de-risk investment? Over to you, sir.
Good morning. Thank you. Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, and also distinguished guests, and then also colleagues. Good morning to you again. My name is Takeo Koike from Asian Development Bank. At this time, I'd also like to thank the organizers for actually setting up this very important kind of discussion place, and then also inviting me as one of the panelists. So coming to the perhaps perspectives and then measures for mobilizing private sector finance into this space, we'd like to actually focus on few kind of key areas. One is, of course, policy guidance, but the second area is achieving good risk and then reward balance to attract private sector. In that respect, the government's role is very important. Also, the donors' roles are quite important. And then, in addition to that, we'd like to stress that the capacity to identify right projects and then structure bankable project structure is also very important. And then ADB is also keen to support such project preparation work to basically, attract interest by the private sector. And then also, I like to emphasize the importance of capacity. It is not a one-time kind of intervention. It has to be very continuous and then has to go on as many projects come up and then delivered. As a kind of long-term, hopefully a long-term trusted and then patient kind of development partner, currently ADB is looking at a very programmatic approach to basically achieve this financing mobilization in the disaster and then climate risk area. First, policy formulation. We are now trying to develop a policy-based loan up to $200 million called Green Resilient Inclusive Development. This basically touches on various different important areas in relation to green taxonomy, carbon trade, and then also multi-hazard early warning system, and then also development of the disaster risk financing. The second area is a technical assistance. We have already launched this called Building Adaptation and Resilience in the Hindu Kushi Himalayas. This is basically a river basin-based approach to identify disaster and then climate risks of existing and then also future projects, trying to identify options for risk avoidance, mitigation, transfer, and then retention. And then also we built a design of early warning system and then a disaster risk financing schemes. And then lastly, we are now developing a concept for a very ambitious financing vehicle called Climate Finance and then Green and then Resilience Financing Facility. We are kind of aiming to look at $1 billion by 50% grant and 50% concessional funds to create 4 financing windows to work with the government, civil society, and then private sector. And then in addition, we like to focus also on entrepreneurs to foster innovation. So with those kind of, different level of interventions, we try to also create a good platform and an ecosystem to bring in private sector into climate resilience and then disaster management areas.
Thank you so much, sir. A big round of applause to him as well. Brings a lot. ADB has always been a very big part of Nepal, and I think, investment in terms of disaster, climate resilience, climate finance becomes very, very important for a mountainous country like ours, because the disaster, as we are, from the global perspective as well, we are the most disaster-prone country, around top 10 countries. So the areas where disaster, we call that 3 planetary crisis that we have, and disaster becomes one of the biggest, and the focus is there as well, and also having to have that climate financing under that becomes very, very pertinent. Thank you so much for bringing that onto our platform, as well as communicating that to us. Also, the idea in terms of capacity development is very, very important, and to make all the sectors ready for consuming this investment, or to bridge this gap in terms of financing. With this, just to look at the capacity as well, and really from the private sector's lens, you bring that private sector lens to this panel. Our panelist here, the expert, Manohar Das Mool, who is an executive member of Nepal Chamber of Commerce and has led a lot of private sector where he's a chairman for insurance companies, hydropower companies, banks. He's also promoted, is a promoter of banks. So from the private sector, and you're also investing quite a lot in the small and medium enterprises and the loan that these people are trying to fetch. And also, the capacity of these people, if it is, are we enough? Do we have that? So what are the key drivers, opportunities and challenges for strengthening ease of doing business for such a large people, who are in contact with you in terms of trying to get insurance, maybe trying to get loan from the banks? So with your experience, what would be those drivers? I think it'll come in a while. Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, I think it's working. Thank you, Anuji. Right Honorable Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister, and the esteemed panelists here with me. Regarding your question, for strengthening the ease of doing business in Nepal, it requires a comprehensive understanding of the key drivers, opportunities, and challenges facing the country. I think here are some of the key factors to consider. The key drivers, the government initiatives. The Nepalese government has to show the commitment for attracting foreign investment, and for this, I think the government has implemented the one-window policy for business registration, and establishment of the investment board itself demonstrates to streamline the processes. It demonstrates the Nepalese effort to streamline the processes. Also recently, the government has amended various acts that shows that the government is serious to enhance the business environment in Nepal. Secondly, strategic location. Nepal is strategically located between India and China, and which presents opportunities for trade and investment, particularly in sectors such as tourism, hydropower, and infrastructure development. Thirdly is natural resources. The country's abundant natural resources, including water resources for hydropower generation and scenic landscapes for tourism, provide opportunities for investment and economic growth. Then the young workforce. Nepal has a relatively young and growing workforce, offering a potential demographic dividend for businesses seeking skill level at competitive wages. And of course, infrastructure development. Investments in infrastructure, including transportation, energy, and telecommunications, can improve the connectivity and thus reduce the cost of doing business in Nepal. Now, coming to the opportunities, tourism. I think it has been said many times, Nepal's rich cultural heritage, biodiversity, and of course, scenic landscapes and adventure tourism opportunities present significant potential for growth in the tourism sector. Energy is another sector. With its abundant water resources, this has been said many times and again, Nepal has a potential to become a significant exporter of hydropower, attracting investment in energy sector and for the infrastructure projects. The potential for solar and wind energy also is immense. We have a ready-made market for energy-hungry countries that are our neighbors. And of course, agriculture and agribusiness. Agriculture is a key sector of the Nepalese economy. I think this has been said earlier also. And there are opportunities for investments in agribusinesses, including food processing, agriculture technology, and export-oriented agriculture for high-value agro-products. And of course, the food processing industries have a multiplier effect on the economy. Information technology. Nepal's growing IT sector, fueled by a young and educated workforce, presents opportunities for outsourcing, software development, and IT-enabled services. As one of the speakers yesterday has rightly mentioned, geographically we are a landlocked country, but now we can become a land-linked country through IT. This is one sector in which we have a level playing field with other competing countries. Manufacturing, there is potential for investment in manufacturing industries such as textiles, garments, pharmaceuticals, light engineering, leveraging Nepal's skilled labor force and strategic location. The scope of investment in industries based on local raw materials is also significant. Now coming to the challenges, of course, bureaucracy and corruption. Complex regulatory processes, bureaucratic hurdles, and corruption can hinder the ease of doing business in Nepal, which could discourage both domestic as well as foreign investors. So we need to streamline our processes and to make our regulatory framework more transparent. Infrastructure deficit. Inadequate infrastructure, including transportation, energy, and logistics, poses challenges for business in terms of connectivity and reliability and cost. The government needs to focus on infrastructure development. This is the sector where Nepal needs to attract foreign FDIs. Political instability. Political instability and frequent changes in the government policies create uncertainty for the investors and can deter long-term investment. There has been frequent changes in the government, but yesterday we heard the finance ministers, both past and present, belonging to different political parties, all stressing a unified approach to economic and business policies. Access to finance. Limited access to finance, particularly for small and medium enterprises, constrain business growth and entrepreneurship in Nepal. Also, the lack of sovereign rating is also hampering our ability to access foreign funds. Skills and shortages. Despite the young workforce, there are skill shortages in key sectors, including technical and manual skills, which can affect productivity and competitiveness. We need to invest in technical education and create a skilled manpower. So my focus is that we have to look at the challenges and we can take up the challenges. And of course, the government has taken initiatives to take up the challenges. And also, if you look at the World Bank Index for ease of doing business, I think Nepal is ranked around 94, I think. Yeah, I think Nepal is 94 out of the 190 countries that were surveyed. And if you look at our regional neighbors, I think Bhutan is on 89, Sri Lanka is 99th, India is 63rd, Maldives is 147, Bangladesh is 168. So if you look at the index, Nepal ranks relatively well, but I think there is a lot of need to work for us to make doing business better in Nepal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manoj sir. I think round of applause. And also the fact that we are ranked not very low, I guess, like, in an average 94 in terms of ease of doing business. As we do our business, we really think, oh my God, there's so many things that needs to improve. And when I was writing the challenges, I was like, yes, all these are big challenges, but then to really know that we're quite well in terms of ease of doing the business is an opportunity for all of us to really look at Nepal in a brighter side and say, hey, we are ready for investment. I think your deliberation in terms of us having this one window policy which is coming up, having Nepal Investment Board set up is already the fact that we're already ready for investors to come in. Also, the fact our comparative and competitive advantage over the strategic place that we're linked in. And also land link is such a wonderful thing to think of, where we are talking about we as landlocked. Just to look at ourselves as land link changes the whole perspective of how we would see Nepal now from today. And also IT becomes one of the major factors which would also change the narrative of us being landlocked to land linked. I think thank you so much, a wonderful deliberation from your side, and I think I hope all our audience here, are we enjoying? Are we seeing the perspective here? I can see a lot of smiley faces, so thank you so much. With this, we have an international guest here from India, and then we specially invited Navita Srikanchi, who is an international development expert, has worked in various government and international organizations like ADB, World Bank, as well as together with the government of India, and has an extensive experience working with Nepal government in terms of looking at various risks such as like crime, fraud, and how do we mitigate such risk? How do we really, if you are to really look into the investment bit of it, the risk becomes very, very important to be looked at, and also how these risks are like embedded in the governance structure. And how do we see those risks? And until and unless we understand and see the right risk, we wouldn't have the right solution for it. So my question to you is, given your extensive experience in looking at various risks, what are the major risks in investment? And what are the aspects of governance which comes in to really cater or to address such kind of risk? Madam, to you.
A very good morning, audible? A very good morning, session chair, with your permission. Distinguished excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would want to express my gratitude to Government of Nepal for inviting me, having me here. And also would like to acknowledge the success of the inaugural session. Really want to commend the excellent work that Government of Nepal has done and the resounding success which was well noted yesterday. I had a great opportunity to work with Government of Nepal back in 2015-16 when not only I looked at the local government but the entire area of the anti-corruption and the governance. So probably a lot of what I will share comes back with my experience of having worked here, and will bring in the Indian experience as well as the global. I think when we talk of investment in green and climate resilient businesses, let me just take investment away for a second. And if I'm talking about green and climate resilient, then I'm talking about adaptation. So I'm talking about change behavior. And change behavior doesn't happen at the center. The policies are made at the centers. The adaptation or the change behavior happens at the last mile. This is where I would want to push back and leave that thought that the role of the local, where the adaptation has to be the change behavior, that becomes important, that how is the last mile getting integrated in the policy implementation, which means then also in all the investment strategies. Second, we tend to push, if I go back to the long-term strategy of Nepal, we talk about these very ambitious net zero commitments. And almost towards the end, I find a cross-cutting area which is mentioned at the gender equality, social inclusion, livelihoods, and governance. Now, what I want to push back here is that until this cross-cutting area takes a priority in our thought process, we are missing the point. The reason why I'm saying is that the green goals or the environmental goals cannot be seen in isolation with economic goals. And let me demonstrate with an example. There's a very famous saying, Hariyo Ban Nepal ko Dhan, which basically means that Nepal's forest, the green forest, is Nepal's wealth, which means it should be a very prosperous country. Now, given that earlier speakers have spoken about the 45% cover, commendable work, and from this podium, I extend my gratitude and congratulate the community forest groups who've done this tremendous work. We must acknowledge it. But I wonder, have we inspired them enough for this tremendous work they've done? And this is where I come back to the question of growth. For those to be inspired at the local level, they need growth opportunities. Now, growth opportunities will come with more economic investment. So what I'm trying to push here is that have we harnessed the potential of our forest well enough? Have we actually, this country is so rich in timber production, it could be. I was reading one of the statistics that there's about 120 million cubic feet of timber, which can is the total production, and only 60 million cubic feet timber is required by this country, which means there's a capacity to export. Not only that, just the medicinal herbs, but it's surprising, shouldn't we be asking then why Nepal is importing timber? And this is where we need to go back. And if that was not
Sorry for the technical glitch. Are we changing the mic? Okay. If you could shorten it a little because your time is up.
So just to wrap it up, if we come back to the livelihoods, what I'm talking here about is a systematic and a scientific way of managing our community forests that we could have harnessed the potential, resulted in more jobs and more growth opportunities at a local level, that the livelihoods could be rightly impacted. Now, this couldn't have been done without the role and support of local government. So being a governance specialist, I come back to the last mile, and last mile is all about the local government and governance. So I would want to push back that unless until the local government becomes a part in the entire investment model, we will not be able to make the impact we want to drive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Navitaji. A round of applause. I think very, very important that we also look at from private sector, we're going into the local governance and at the local level, how important it is to have the buy-in from the local government themselves to look into climate change, climate financing perspective that we are actually looking at. With that, we have a last speaker, but then this is my first round, and I can see our CEO here who's like, waiting, so I don't know if I can have another round, but I do want to take one more round just as a key takeaways from each of us. So with this, I would like to go to Bishal Thapaji, the founder and chairman of Saral Urja Nepal, worked in government and non-government private sectors and national and international organizations in energy sector. And energy, I think, has come up very, very pertinently, and then is an asset to Nepal. So I thought we really think it is an important aspect to be discussing on in this platform, where we're not just talking about a big plan, but also alternative energy sources. So sir, my question to you is, with Nepal's focusing on hydropower, what are the small opportunities and challenges you see in getting investment in other alternative sources of energy, such as solar?
Thank you. Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, Secretary Karel, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. Thank you for the question, Ms. Shrestha. It's a pretty loaded question because in Nepal, as perhaps many of you know, the space to really engage an honest assessment on hydro is quite limited. And so I draw upon the full immunity provided by the Nepal Investment Summit to give you a rather candid take on what hydro means to Nepal and what the prospects are for alternative energy. Over the last 2 decades, the growth in Nepal's energy sector and the impacts that it has had has been tremendous. Energy access is now over 95%. There is an increased demand and supply balance, and we export a significant amount of electricity to India. Nevertheless, at this moment, the very singular and sole focus on hydroelectricity now threatens to betray the people of Nepal. We can't keep producing electricity if we can't deliver it to the people that need it, when they need it, and at affordable rates that they need it. Let me give you some examples of what this might mean. Electricity accounts for less than 6% of Nepal's total energy use. It is one of the lowest in the world, certainly the lowest in South Asia, and 66% of our energy use comes from traditional biomass. The lowest in South Asia, and the comparative across the other countries in South Asia is half of that. If we were to electrify that, we would not only double, we would increase our electricity demand by order of 10. an estimate from the government of Nepal Ministry of Energy shows. Approximately 2.1 million households in Nepal currently use less than 7 units of electricity per month. That is 2.1 million out of the 4.7 million households that receive electricity from the national grid use less than 7 kilowatt hours per month. That is not enough to fully light up a household. The average household energy consumption in Nepal is 69 units per month, 69 kilowatt hours per month. That is lower than any country in South Asia and one of the lowest in the world. Our per capita electricity consumption is around 380 kilowatt hours, certainly lower. But this is the interesting fact. If you were to normalize it for income, if you were to take comparatives such as India and other South Asian countries, and you ask, what would our income level support? The answer is that we would triple our electricity use for the level of income we are today. In other words, we have the capacity to consume, but we are not able to consume. And let me show you the statistic on why that is the case. If you look at ownership of household appliances and equipment that are there today, for example, television penetrates 50% of the household. Fans are in 60% of Nepalese household. The census is from 2021. If you were to add all of that up and you ask, what should the electricity demand for households be? It would be in excess of 5,000 gigawatt hours. The electricity supplied to households by Nepal Electricity Authority in 22-23 was 3,800 gigawatt hours, meaning that there would be a 40% increase in household electricity consumption if you could actually deliver it to the households today based on the appliances energy we have. So the focus on hydro is also making our geopolitical situation far more complex. It is, in some sense, impaired our supply reliability. Our vulnerabilities in supplies are compounded. So I am here today to basically propose that we shift our emphasis and we add to the portfolio of hydro that we have. There is no doubt that our rivers and our hydroelectricity generation is one of the greatest assets of Nepal. But its singular focus cannot fulfill the destiny of the people of Nepal. We need alternative sources. I'm here today to call for an investment in distributed solar. And by distributed solar, I don't mean the centralized solar plants that supply electricity to NEA. I mean systems that provide electricity directly to the consumers. These are not off-grid systems. These are systems that are integrated with the grid, that today can add to reliability, can add to affordability, and can provide and multiply the clean energy supply that is available to consumers. Around the world, these kinds of systems are being used upon now by countries around the world to enhance reliability, to enhance resilience, and to provide consumers the choices they need in order to make cleaner energy affordable, resilient, and more reliable. So I'm here today to build on the work that has occurred in this sector, and I'm calling specifically for a $20 million investment to empower Nepalese to be able to participate in the production and generation and consumption of electricity on-site using clean energy and in a way that supplements the growth of hydro that has been in Nepal. We need to invest not just in Nepal, but we also need to invest equally in Nepalese. The destiny of the people of Nepal must also belong to the people of Nepal, and this investment is extremely critical to realizing that. Thank you.
A big round of applause. You just made a pitch, which was really, really interesting. And also the fact that we're also looking at climate resilience the alternative sources actually builds that resilience of us as well, in terms of not being solely dependent in one area, but then having an alternative areas to look into. So I would really like to go into a rapid round now with all of us, like, just giving us 3 points in terms of the key takeaways that we wanted. And I would like to start with our Secretary, Deepak sir, to really look at what are the instruments that are here. I can just to say, like, what are the instruments, what is ministry doing in terms of, like, really tapping on to those investment, and to also to aim these sectoral targets that we have as well. So 3 key messages that we want to give on what we are doing at this point of time.
Okay, thank you again. Yeah, I again reiterate my statement that investing in nature conservation is not for getting benefits and profit right and immediately there, but it is for the making environment so that benefit can be generated in the long run. This is the motto of investing in nature conservation. And about the financial mechanism, you said for this climate investment, you said that we have number of mechanisms, especially the thing is that government budgetary system is one of the most robust mechanisms here right now. But the thing is that our government is not capacitated to invest all of this requirement can be met. Only about 5% of the total this climate action missions can be met out of that. And rest of this funding should be come from outside. And that's why, as I said earlier in my presentation, this international climate finance mechanism and multilateral development bank, and also our development partners, our private sectors, all are there to finance in the climate action, That's why, but the role of the things is government is to coordinate the things, to make the environment robust one. And we have right now 3 tiers of the government, and 3 tiers of government also allocate the budgets for this climate action. But it is not sufficient, as I mentioned. This is the climate finance mechanism right now we have adopted, and we also have some special funds to get benefit and to get funds from that, like Forest Development Fund and this Environmental Conservation Fund we also have. We can utilize these things for our climate actions. This is the major financing mechanism right now we have, and we are making it more comfortable with the international finance and private finance also. The instrument you talks about that attracts the climate finance is that, first I would start with the policy instrument right we have. We have a climate change policy, and it says that one of the objectives of that climate change policy is to promote the green economy and work with these low carbon developments. This is the one of the instruments, and this is the things that facilitate in investment in this green sector. And as I mentioned earlier, that government recently has adopted this green, resilient, inclusive development pathways. It means that any projects that is being developed and will be developed in the future should be built in such a way so that it would be climate resilient. And these projects should include this climate component in their systems. This is the things that the government of Nepal has already adapted it. This is the one area. And policy, I already mentioned this is there. And we also have a regulatory mechanisms which provides the facility, which facilitate for climate investment. We have a Environment Conservation Act right now, and we have a provision of investing in adaptation action and mitigation actions there. And there is also provision of to take part in the international what we call it, carbon trading. This act has given permission to the government to take part in the international carbon trading. This kind of instrument and this kind of situation government has built so that investment can be made easily over there. And few things, as we said earlier, and investment in nature and investment in climate action, especially in the adaptation action, agriculture and forestry sector is the prime one. We should think over that. And it should be sustainable in the long run. And for that purposes, for especially I would talk about this green sector investment and what we call opportunity for investment in the green sector, especially forestry sector. I would say there are few projects and areas where the investment can come and enjoy in this country. Only nature-based tourism development is one of the area where investment is potential from the private sector. And they can get benefit and profit from this involving in this sector. Another important area for private sector to be involved in is that the large-scale investment in wood-based industry and furniture development. We know that more than 10 billion Nepali rupees we have been exporting foreign currency to the outside for importing forest products and other things. And we need to, if we invest more within the country, then that can be saved for our economy. And this is another area where the investment can be made. And also we have, right now government has changed its acts so that this wildlife farming can be done within the country. And people enjoy these products of wild animals meat over the countries. And this is one of the areas where the private sector can be invested and can be attracted. And government has given a permission for that purposes. Also the zoo management is one of the area. Right now we have a small zoo in the Jaulakhel, which is not sufficient. This is beyond the capacity of the capital. Now government has also facilitated and changed its acts in the National Park Acts so that zoo can be operated and can be run through investing it in this area. This is another area. It requires large amount of money, of course. That's another area is that. Also the hubs and NTFPs we have. Our earlier presentation, Surendra Joshi from ICIMOD has clearly spelled out about the areas of investment in the adaptation action and mitigation action. And hubs and NTFPs are our own resources. And it's our capacity. It is very important resources for the country. And the investment in cultivation, processing, and marketing in this area is under scope there. And so that this private sector investment can be generated in these areas. Also, the agroforestry, our students also mentioned that there are lots of activities where this private sector can be attracted in this green sector. But again, reiterate that investing in nature should not be think in the profitable terms and benefit at the right moment. It should think in the long run. And therefore, I request all the investors, all the parties, all the sector of the society, and to invest in the nature conservation so that our environment can be sustainable for the long run. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. A big round of applause. I think, the areas touched upon would be a policy guidelines for all of us as well to really look into and harness those opportunities that are here, not just at a bigger scale in terms of hydropower and infrastructure, but small areas like agriculture, non-timber forest products, and then the opportunities that lies there. Wildlife farming is an interesting area, we looked into agroforestry. I think these are the areas which we would really want to focus on, and thank you so much for bringing highlight to those areas on asking for the investments to bring in those investment. And I believe that once the policy buy-in is there for us, then I think everything will be steered in a proper way. With that, I would like to go to ADB's commitments to, if you could have 3 key messages that you want to give in terms of how do we steer this investment, how do we make this conducive environment for businesses in Nepal?
Thank you so much. I'd like to be very brief. I think it is important to basically largely speaking to improve the access to finance in the agriculture sector, as well as also on the other side, upgrade productivity and then value adds in the sector as well. So I think many of the speakers have already kind of touched upon this topic, but
there are perhaps few specific areas where we could continue efforts. For instance, aggregation of the individual farmers, and then also usage of expanded usage of cooperatives, for instance, improved value addition, also product diversification, and then also to develop a broader value chain, including logistics, processing, marketing, access to finance, etc. It is also important to also note that introduction of new technologies is also a key area where ADB is willing to support. So all in all, in addition to some of the enabling kind of interventions that I mentioned earlier, I also touched on a few kind of specific transaction level kind of innovation which we are looking at. For instance, we hope to introduce local currency financing to serve better to the needs of the local communities. Introduction of blended finance to basically make the financing terms more competitive and affordable. Introduction of credit enhancement facility, guarantees and so forth to mitigate some of the risks for the financiers. In relation to local currency lending, we may also explore risk participation, working with the local financial institutions. And then also, I just mentioned creation of seed investment facility by combination of equity and a grant. By those kind of things, I hope more kind of financing could be facilitated into the agriculture sector.
Thank you so much. Agriculture being so neglected, I think it is very, very important to have those focus, as well as financing becomes pertinent for any industry to go. So risk participation, creation of seed investment would actually encourage more and more farmer to become an entrepreneur and not just farmer. With this, I would like to go to our private sector representative who would then discuss, to Manohar sir, I think how can we transition to facilitate the traditional sector as an infrastructure and hydropower towards green businesses and small and medium enterprises centered around agriculture, forestry and natural resources. Our Deepak sir actually talked about how important these sectors are from the business lens, how do businesses transition and make that into a lucrative business?
Thank you, Anuji, for the question. For the facilitating the transition, I think it involves several strategies, mainly policy support. And this could include tax breaks, subsidies for green initiatives, and regulations that favor sustainable practices. And financial incentives. This could involve grants, low-interest loans, or venture capitals, specifically target at green businesses. Also, capacity building. We should offer training and education programs to help traditional sector workers acquire the skills needed for green industries. This could include vocational training in sustainable agriculture, forestry management, and renewable energy technologies. And of course, research and development. We should invest in research and development to spur innovation in green technologies and practices. Encourage collaboration between academia, industry, and government to develop new solutions for sustainability. And of course, PPPs, the public-partner partnerships. We should foster partnership between government, private sector companies, and NGOs to drive investment and innovation in green industries. PPP can leverage resources and expertise from multiple sectors to accelerate the transition. We need the market access also. So facilitating market access for green businesses by promoting eco-friendly products and services, establishing certification standards for sustainability, and creating platforms for marketing and distribution. Now, infrastructure development also is another strategy. Invest in infrastructure that supports green industries, such as renewable energy infrastructure, sustainable transportation networks, and eco-friendly manufacturing facilities. Of course, we need the community engagement also. Involve local communities in the transition process by consulting them on sustainable development projects, providing opportunities for local ownership and participation, and ensuring that green initiatives benefit local economies. Information awareness campaigns also to be taken up, raise awareness about the benefits of transitioning to green businesses and SMEs among stakeholders, including businesses, investors, policymakers, and the general public. Provide information on the environmental, social, and economic advantages of sustainable practices. And finally, incentivizing collaboration. Encourage collaboration and knowledge sharing between traditional sectors and green businesses. For example, traditional infrastructure companies could partner with renewable energy firms to incorporate green technologies into the projects. By adopting these strategies, government, businesses, and communities can work together to facilitate a smooth transition from traditional sectors to sustainable and green businesses centered around agriculture, forestry, and natural resources. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've been told that we really have no time at all. So just one key message from your side in terms of what should we take on further?
What I'll do is I'll take 1 minute, but quick 5 messages.
Okay.
Yeah? So first is the newer technologies. And I just want to talk about one quick example. About 20 years back, one river project was started back in India on the conservation. 20 years later, there was a lot of complaint that the project has not delivered. The Supreme Audit Institution used the entire geospatial tools to find out the time that the river inlet, so the DPR basically was not correctly prepared, and geospatial tools was used to find out that river inlets were not as many correctly pointed out. So what I'm trying to point out that newer technologies help you in actually having the right data as a base for then doing the right DPR and then seeking the investments. So I would definitely urge that the National Planning Commission does use a lot of new technologies for the right assessment and the right DPRs being done. 1, 2, back in 2016, the UN adopted a resolution where preparation of natural resource accounts was adopted by 190 countries. And I tell you proudly that India has embarked on this journey, and today, mineral, energy, the entire mineral value chain from the stock to the quality, where it is moving in the chain, where it ends up, is all identifiable, it can be tracked, it can be monitored, it can be audited. So I would highly urge today that Nepal embarks on this journey of adoption of these preparation of natural resource accounts. Third, very important, is we've spoken about significant energy infrastructure in coming decades in this country. We really need to invest in security, and I don't think we've spoken much about security apparatus, that these critical energy infrastructures require significant security, both from the physical and the cyber security. So I would urge that it's time. We are seeking huge investments in hydro. It is time that we can also demonstrate from Nepal that we are ready with all the security backup. Last and not the least, responsible business conduct. Today, presently in the country, in Nepal, we have voluntary guidelines on responsible business conduct. And it's time, and probably because the listed companies were predominantly banking and finance. But today we have hydro companies which are listed companies, we have cement companies which are listed, and going forward there will be more. In India, what we have is responsible business conduct guidelines, which are driven by the UN guiding principles on business and human rights, Paris Convention, ILO norms. So it's really time that I request the Nepal government that one of the important outcomes from this summit should be about responsible business conduct guidelines.
Thank you so much. I think very, very important key 5 messages, and then a round of applause. I hear that our chair really has to go. So if Bisal sir, if you excuse us, you already pitched it, and therefore, we would want to say that with your permission, sir, I would like to give the floor to you for your concluding this session and your closing remarks. Or would you like to, sir, go to the podium? Yeah. Or you? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Anu, for guiding the session skillfully. Thank you, distinguished panelists, for sharing your expertise and wisdom to this august gathering on the potential and necessity of green and climate resilient business and development infrastructure in Nepal. Thank you, participants, for listening to the deliberations very attentively, and I hope that it will be advantageous to you too. Nepal is endowed with unparalleled natural resources and diversities. The Himalayas, towering in the north, provides global services and has nurtured the whole of South and Southeast Asia. The greenery is abundant throughout the country, work as a natural buffer to climate change. During the discussion, what we have all agreed is that we cannot wait any longer to preserve our pristine nature. At the same time, we cannot wait any longer to achieve a higher trajectory of economic growth. We cannot wait any longer for progress and prosperity. To meet all these aspirations, we cannot wait any longer to harness green and climate resilient business and investment in Nepal. Therefore, as a synthesis of the statements and views of our panelists, I would like to conclude the session by inviting prospective partners and investors to bring greener and climate resilient business and investments to Nepal. The government is committed to facilitating and promoting these businesses, recognizing their multiplier effect on the economy and the environment. Let us join hands together towards a prosperous future where our economic growth blends in harmony with our nature. And with this, I declare the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you. With permission from the session chair, I wish to take over the forum now. And ladies and gentlemen, let us extend a round of applause for this very, very enriching and insightful session, for all the invaluable contribution that this panel has made. And may I now turn to the session chair one more time. If on behalf of the government, I humbly request the session chair to make a presentation of the token of appreciation to the panelists who have contributed to the panel. May I... I request the esteemed panelists to kindly come forward and receive this token of appreciation from the organizers, from the distinguished, our Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Bishal Thapa, Founder and Chairman, Saral Urja Nepal. May I invite the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister center stage, please. Predika ji, if you could come forward. Please come to me. Ms. Navita Srikanth, International Development Specialist. This is extending our deep felt gratitude. Mr. Manohar Das Mool, Executive Member, Nepal Chamber of Commerce and expert in finance sector and promoter of insurance companies. Mr. Takeo Koike, Regional Head, Private Sector Development, South Asia Department, ADB. Dr. Deepak Kumar Kharal, Secretary, Ministry of Forest and Environment. To Dr. Surendra Raj Joshi, the presenter, who is the coordinator of High REAP. And to the session moderator, Ms. Anu Joshi Shrestha, Enterprise and Value Chain Development Specialist. And ladies and gentlemen, with deepest honor and respect, we take a moment to invite the IBN CEO, Mr. Sushil Bhatta, to extend our honor and appreciation to the session chair, the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, as well as the Honorable Foreign Minister, for not only gracing us as the session chair and making very important observations and statements, but also for his guidance, supervision and direction that he's given to the endeavor undertaken by the entire team. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, and to the entire panel. May I request all of you to kindly step forward for a quick photo opportunity before we call the session off. Thank you indeed. We couldn't have been more grateful to our session chair and the members in the panel. And thank you one more time for your valued time and your invaluable and enriching sharing. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it from this session. Thank you so much for being such an important part of this entire engagement. Thank you.